Supreme Court justices are hearing a case pitting free speech against gay rights. Dozens of people protested in front of the Supreme Court during today's oral arguments. A Christian website designer is challenging a Colorado law that requires her to create wedding websites for same-sex couples, even though she opposes same-sex marriage. She claims the government can't make her create messages that violate her First Amendment rights.
But state officials say the law is about making sure LGBTQ plus people are treated equally, so businesses can't turn them away. A decision from the Supreme Court on this case is expected by the end of June. Joining us now is CBS News chief legal correspondent Jan Crawford. She was present for the oral arguments on this case that took place earlier today. Jan, it's good to see you. This case comes only 4 years after the Supreme Court ruled in favor of a Colorado baker who refused to make a cake for a same-sex wedding. All of us remember that story. Why are the justices now hearing a dispute that is so similar to that one?
Well, I mean, it's because they didn't resolve it when they handed that down 4 years ago. The baker won, but on very narrow grounds. In fact, that decision was 7-2, and even Justice Kagan, a liberal justice, sided with him in that case. But the justices stressed that that ruling wasn't answering the bigger First Amendment issues that are at play. They kind of focus on how this Colorado commission had treated him, and so it wasn't the big picture issue. They kind of kicked the can down the road, so to speak. So they're back today looking at whether or not a different case, but similar issues, whether a Colorado website designer can refuse to design websites for same-sex couples for their weddings. She is arguing that she, opposes that based on her Christian beliefs, and so the government cannot force her to give messages and say things that she doesn't agree with. Now, the state of Colorado, arguing today, said this would set a terrible precedent. If she could refuse to do that, then other people could have license to discriminate, as a lawyer for the state put it. The liberal justices, of course, were very concerned about that. Where would you draw the line in this case? What about interracial marriage? What about people with disabilities, as Justice Sotomayor pointed out? How would it impact them? So there was a lot of back and forth during 2.5 hours of these arguments today about how this case, if she were to prevail, how it would affect other cases.
So, Jan, if the court rules in favor of Smith's argument, what does that mean for Colorado's anti-discrimination law?
Well, it means that if she wins, she's going to be able to kind of have an exception to it where, she doesn't have to, quote, serve everyone as a public accommodation. Now, Justice Thomas said today, this is not like a hotel or a restaurant or a train. This is a business that provides expressive services. And she said, I'm not saying I won't have gay clients. I do. I just don't want to make wedding websites because that same-sex marriages are against my religious beliefs. So if she were to win and the court were to rule in her favor, which they may narrowly, I think, after today's arguments, then the argument would be, what about the next case? And that is going to be the challenge for the court here, is how do they draw those lines? How do they say if they want to protect her right to free speech and being free from having to compel to speak a message she disagrees with, how do they draw that line so it doesn't sweep in all these other cases? That was much of the argument today.
And, well, what about the next case if the court rules against her argument? What does that mean for free speech?
Right, and that was the other part of the argument. I mean, this is a very hard case because if the court were to rule against her, then a lawyer who's representing her said, well, that would require potentially an African-American artist to paint an Aryan cross, refuse that kind of services. An artist or a writer, photographers, they would have to create works that were really offensive to them that they disagreed with. So again, this kind of back and forth, and the case really is, you see it pitting the right to free speech and the First Amendment against a person, a same-sex couple's right to be free from discrimination. It's a difficult case. I could see why the court punted on it 4 years ago, but this time I think it will be harder for them to do that. There is a question, though. I mean, they may not decide it. There is a question about whether this case is really here too soon. I think that they're going to go ahead and decide it, though. But who knows what they're going to do? We'll find out, presumably, by the end of June.
Yeah, to be continued.
It changes depending on the lens through which you look at it.
Yeah, I mean, these cases are hard. I mean, that's how they get up to the Supreme Court. And then their job, though, they got to decide it.
Yeah, for sure. Jan Crawford, appreciate you as always. Thank you.
Thanks.